Welcome to the Q&A for the Emelin Theater screening of the New Yorker short films tonight. Tonight we have a Q&A with co-directors of Nuisance, Gabriella Osio Vanden and Jack Weisman, two incredibly talented up-and-coming filmmakers. Thanks for taking a break from your hiking adventures in the Adirondacks to talk to us about the film. So I'd love to share with our audience some of the backstory and making of Nuisance. So would love to start with hearing your inspiration for making the film in the first place. Like what got you to the Arctic to undertake this project?
So, well, thank you so much for having us, Emelin Film Club. We're really excited that you're screening the film. Gabby, do you want to answer how we got started?
Yeah, so it all started while we were still in film school in 2015. We went up to Churchill, Manitoba for the first time to work with another classmate on a similar type of project, or at least just looking at sort of what was going on in Churchill, and we became obsessed. Because both of us hadn't really known that it existed or that it was a place where you go to photograph polar bears.
Yeah, so there was a student project, and I didn't know that there were even polar bears in Canada. And so I was sort of asked like 2 days before they went up there, do you want to come along? And so I did. And so we had this incredible experience, but it was so short. It was only 5 days, and we were like way in over our heads. We were scrambling to make sense of this circus, and we came away with sort of like part of a film. And I think the project was a little discouraging for all of us, and it wasn't really ever finished, but it sparked this sort of initial excitement and interest in this area, and it kept us going back.
And I think for both Jack and I, we grew up watching a lot of nature, films, and
we love Planet Earth.
We love Planet Earth, stuff like that. And so we were really struck by how different it looks from the final products of those types of filmmaking.
There just seemed to be a disconnect between what we were seeing in the television shows versus what was happening on the ground in this particular town.
Okay. And so authenticity is something that you were trying to evoke with your approach to it.
Yeah, hopefully just sort of letting the images speak more than having a narrator or sort of explaining what the animals might be feeling.
Right. So speaking of the animals, so your film is different and I think a number of really positive respects, and as you know, I love it. How did you go from looking to have a more authentic entry point and result, of course, too, like to really embracing specifically going for the perspective of the bear?
Yeah. Well, I think like Nuisance Bear is sort of like the latest iteration of several attempts to try to make this film. And in the earlier versions, we were shooting it with a tripod, and you have to get in and out of the car, and it's really cold, and you end up missing a lot, or you get impatient.
And it's dangerous. You have to hire a bear guide with you, someone that has a weapon just in case something happens. So it just becomes more and more complicated.
So it's challenging logistically. And then at some point, like during COVID, I was watching the polar bear episode, and I saw the making of, and I saw the way that they were rigging the cameras to the cars, and it just hit me that like in order to maintain the bear's perspective, you actually have to move with the animals, and by putting a camera on the car, and because the bears are accessible through a network of roads around Churchill, you could actually stick with them. We could follow the bears as they sort of move throughout the day. And I think we wanted to make a film from the bear's perspective as much as possible, but sort of configuring the camera in this way allowed us to really sort of place the camera at eye level.
Yeah, we also had gotten a dog before this, and I think that helped us think more about the animal's perspective, having a relationship built with the creature.
And going back to what you were just saying about rigging the camera in a different way, so did you have it at a lower level than what you had seen before? Most of them in the past, you were saying, were shooting from the top of a car.
Well, sometimes I think that there's like within like bear photography explicitly, there's always sort of a desire to shoot from the eye level of the polar bear or even just slightly below it. And so a lot of times the nature photographers will use these sort of baby legs tripods so that the camera is closer to the ground. So I think that perspective isn't particularly unique for polar bear photography, but I don't think that anyone had sort of filmed it where it included humans within the gaze. And also the technology didn't really exist until recently that was cheap enough that an independent film like ourselves could afford, that would allow us to configure the camera in a way where it could be mounted on the car and it could be moving and remotely controlled from within the interior of the car.
Well, and I think what's a little bit different about our photography too is that we don't really, we maintain a view from the point of view. We don't, cut to other stuff and other types of shooting. We just are consistent with keeping it at that eye level and with that kind of movement.
Right. And in terms of not cutting away, were you deliberately going for longer shots? Was that part of the concept?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I think it just sort of happened as well. Like once we were rigged in this way, I think we discovered a lot through doing it. But funnily enough, we had one of our gimbals break and then we had another gimbal flown into us that wasn't as sturdy. So every now and then it would just veer off. So, we'd be following something and it would just pan over, which was
ruin the shot.
And it would completely ruin the shot. So we were terrified for our opening shot because the longer it went on, the more valuable we realized the shot was going to be, and the higher likelihood that our gimbal was gonna fritz out. So we were really, really pleased when that worked out.
But I think that opening shot of the bear crossing the road sort of set the tone for the entire film. I think once the entire time we were filming that moment, we weren't really breathing.
Yeah.
We had sort of had a previous chance at it with another road, but it wasn't, the interactions weren't the same. The tourists weren't set up the way they were in the shot that you see. So we saw that it was going to happen, and we knew that that was our only shot at that moment where the bear crosses the road. And the guy taking the selfie was completely, we had no idea it was going to happen that way. But we were set up for it. We knew it was going to happen. And so I think just letting the camera roll in that particular moment set the tone, I think, for the entire film.
Right.
And it's all the themes in one shot, which is great.
Yeah. And so were you in the car with your camera mounted on the front for most of the shoot?
Yeah, for all of it. So people are like often like, oh, it was so cold, it was so dangerous, how did you do it? And we were like it was warm in the car, we never really had to get out of it. So for the entire film we drove around about 45 days. And all of it's shot from this particular vehicle.
We ended up working one sort of organism because we all had a task in controlling the camera, and so we developed a short, and it was really kind of a fascinating way to work with others, I think.
Yeah, like normally one operator, one camera maybe, or maybe like somebody pulling focus and a camera operator. But with the gimbal, there has to be a driver, there has to be somebody pulling focus, and then there has to be somebody orienting the camera up and down. All of us sort of had to coalesce in these particular moments. And it was like playing music. It felt like, it was like being in a band and we were just in sync. And then, once the moment was over, we all sort of gasped and didn't realize that we hadn't been breathing.
Right. That's so cool. And for our audience, can you explain what a gimbal is and how it fits into the
For sure. So gimbal is like
it's like a stabilizer.
It's a stabilizer, and they have them for cell phones now. It's sort of like a 3-axis robot that compensates for shake or movement.
So a good example, not technical, is if you think about when you hold a chicken and you move its body around and its head will stay in the same spot. It essentially does that for the camera. So it'll take all of the movement, but the camera will stay still.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a shock, like shocks for cars,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Okay.
Yeah, so we had different levels of shock absorption. We had like a mechanical arm that would stabilize this, and then the actual gimbal, the robot was mounted on that,
And then the camera within that.
and the camera within it, and then post stabilization. So I mean, we don't have the resources that Planet Earth has. They have
Of course. Yeah.
a $500,000 gimbal that can stabilize a 1,000 millimeter lens.
Yeah.
The best lens that we could use was a 200 mil, which in wildlife photography is basically like a wide angle.
Right.
But because we couldn't get as close as Planet Earth, it forced us to be wider, and therefore I think we were able to capture more of the environment.
Okay, interesting. So in terms of hearing about your process, would love to hear you guys speak a bit about your roles as co-directors and how you sort of share the reins and complement each other in terms of skill set, because I'm sure it comes with its own advantages and challenges.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, this was such a unique project too,
Yeah.
because I think it was like very conceptual, and we would talk a lot about like, the bear's perspective and sort of how we were going to configure the equipment.
Yeah, and we do have a similar skill set, and I do think it's us working as directors. We live together, we've worked together, for a long time, and this subject has been part of our friendship and relationship in its entirety. So it's really about talking, I think.
Yeah, we just
for us.
talked about a lot about the project, and then sort of came up with like a sandbox for us to sort of play around in. And then once we're in the field shooting, it sort of just evolves naturally. We positioned ourselves as best we could.
Yeah.
But it almost felt like there weren't a lot of like directorial decisions while we were shooting. Almost, it was sort of just like reacting to what the bear was doing and being patient. And we're all credited as cinematographers, Gabriella, myself, and Sam. And I think in the moment in the car, we sort of collectively would decide, what's the best use of our time right now? Should we sit here with this bear and wait hours, or should we perhaps go to the dump and see what's happening there? And so we didn't really have that much of a plan, I think, when we were shooting.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the editing, I think like it became like, it was a film that in a lot of ways I think was like made in the edit.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. I was going through footage and just going through different iterations of the edit.
Yeah, and like I think Gabby had the idea, or I think maybe it was Will, one of our editors, that to have everything sort of feel like it was in a single day. And that's
Yes,
sort of
it
like,
absolutely has that feeling. So on that subject of sort of evoking the feeling of the film taking place over the course of the day, how long did it actually, if you don't mind, disrupting the movie magic here that's going on? How long was the shoot? How many days was the shoot? And what was your what was your gross amount of footage that you got down to the net cut of 20 something minutes?
Well, this shoot was about 2 months, like 58 days, something like that.
Yeah, so there was like, we packed our car in Toronto. We had to drive to this town, which actually isn't accessible by road. We had to drive to a more southern town, put everything on the train, and then the car goes on the train, and we go on a separate train. So anyways, there was a lot of travel on either end, and it was about 40 days of continuous shooting. But then the work that we had done in previous shoots, sort of, there's a couple of shots from 2017 and 2015, and so all of that material and the experience of shooting it, I think, gave us like, I don't know, it was like 5-7 years for 14 minutes.
Oh my gosh, it was a 40. I mean, I knew it was a long shoot. I had no idea it was 40 days.
I mean, yeah, but a lot of that was, waiting for things to happen. We would go out to shoot and not necessarily get that much, or we would just get, other wildlife. Because with wildlife, it's a lot of waiting.
Right.
So we shot continuously, but actually most of the moments in the film take place in like a period of a few days, actually.
Okay.
And so I think some people believe that, oh, is this like a sorry, let me say that again. I think some people think that the bear might be just one single bear, and other people realize that it's like a composite of several bears. And the reality is it's actually like basically two bears. Bear that crosses the road all the way to the bear that gets chased away from the dump during the daytime is all one bear. And then the bear that gets chased was a different bear on a different morning. But then the bear at nighttime during the Halloween scene, and that returns to the dump, is actually the same bear as the first bear. And so we just sort of found a bear character that was comfortable with us, and sort of like many bears wanted to go to the dump. And that became sort of like the character for the film, but we weren't really planning on it.
Yeah, and I think the composites really work because even if the bear that we're watching being chased is a different bear than the bear at the dump, it's a similar experience for all of the bears. So even if we didn't capture that exact bear having that happen, it probably did happen on another day or happened later and we missed it. So it's still, we feel like an accurate portrayal.
Yeah, this is the collective experiences of these bears during this particular migration, this time of year.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I'm sure it's something that's like a very standard approach with nature filmmaking. So
yeah. Well, it's something we were kind of aware of, not wary of too, because it's easy to manipulate the animals into being one, and especially with polar bears, because you can't tell how old they are, you can't tell what sex they are. Like you can only tell if there's a couple of them or there's only one, and so it's very easy to create this like narrative of a single bear.
Right. Interesting. All right. Well, I thought I knew the film well, but I learned even more about it today, which is great. Well, anyway, thanks guys so much for sharing some of the backstory and inspiration for the film and how it all came together. So interesting. Well, anyway, thanks again for joining the film club tonight. And, I'm excited to see the film enter the world in later in November. So.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
Happy hiking. All right. Take care, guys. All right.
Bye.
Bye.